Joining me now is Middle East correspondent for the Jewish News Syndicate and co-host of the podcast Jerusalem Minute, Josh Hasten. Thank you, Josh, for being here. We appreciate you. Netanyahu spoke to reporters before taking off for Washington. We've been listening to his words. Let's take a listen here. We'll talk on the other side.
I'm leaving for a very important meeting with President Trump in Washington. The fact that this would be President Trump's first meeting with a foreign leader since his inauguration is telling.
All right, so what do you think Netanyahu meant when he said this meeting is telling?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not by coincidence that the leader of the state of Israel is the first foreign leader to meet with President Trump just 2 weeks after he was inaugurated in Washington. This shows that there is no daylight between the president of the United States and the prime minister of the state of Israel, really between the people of the United States and the people of Israel. This is a total 180-degree turn from what Israel was experiencing under the Biden administration. I believe it was 20 months or so before President Biden met with Prime Minister Netanyahu. We're talking about 2 weeks after President Trump was sworn in, and he's already meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. So this just shows the closeness of ties between the two leaders, the closeness of ties between the relationship between the two nations. So I expect a very positive meeting when they, in fact, meet on Tuesday in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it really feels like these two are looking forward to this visit. Netanyahu also said this to reporters before taking off. Let's listen.
The decisions we made in the war have already changed the face of the Middle East. Our decisions and the courage of our soldiers have redrawn the map. But I believe that working closely with President Trump, we can redraw it even further and for the better.
Yeah, the war in Israel has already changed so much in the Middle East. So what could redrawing the map even further look like, to his point?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, number one, Gaza, what the situation there is going to be, and that remains to be seen as we head towards phase 2 of the ceasefire. In addition, and perhaps some of the bigger issues, even bigger than Gaza, are, number one, the situation with Iran. Iran is striving for nuclear weapons. They're the head of the octopus and must be dealt with. Israel has said time and time again it would go at it alone. And I think now with a very good friend in the White House, Israel will get the support it needs from the Trump administration in order to take out Iran's nuclear arsenal if we get to that point. At the same time, President Trump certainly wants to be a part of furthering the Abraham Accords, specifically when it comes to normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. I think that would be the crown jewel in the Abraham Accords. Of course, Israel already, under President Trump's first administration, achieving normalization peace deals with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and other countries. So about a very different Middle East than what was the reality, unfortunately, after the Hamas massacre on October the 7th, the fall of the Syrian regime, decimated Hezbollah, decimated Hamas, and unbelievably, Israel has come out very, very strong, despite the attempts by the Iranian proxies throughout the Middle East to do grave harm to the state of Israel. We're stronger now than we were a year and a half ago, even with all the terrible things that have happened.
You know, negotiations for phase 2 of the ceasefire in Gaza will begin tomorrow. So what can Trump and Netanyahu do to make sure those talks go smoothly? A lot of people have different opinions on how this is going to go down. What do you think?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. Number one, of course, we want all of our hostages returned, and that is one of the key goals that Netanyahu set out when he entered into the ceasefire negotiations. As you mentioned before, yes, Israel right now has received 18 out of the first 33 hostages back. There's still another 70-plus hostages in Gaza. At the same time, though, Israel has not achieved a complete victory over Hamas. And Netanyahu mentioned yesterday that Israel intends to fulfill those objectives, destroying Hamas entirely. We saw those horrible images of Hamas taunting the hostages as they were being released. Hamas has been decimated, don't get me wrong, but they still remain a threat to the state of Israel. And that is one of the goals, to make sure Hamas is no longer a threat from Gaza. So I think when Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump meet on Tuesday, Netanyahu will stress to Trump that Hamas can no longer remain standing the day after. Hamas can no longer rule Gaza once the war is over. So that is something very, very important to remember here.
All right, we'll take that in mind as we move forward. Middle East correspondent for the Jewish News Syndicate and co-host of the podcast Jerusalem Minute. We'll have to check that out. Josh Hasten, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.